Hello, everyone. We're here today as part of World Unity Week for A New Earth Rising, and we're going to be exploring business, technology, and consciousness, a program that originated through the Conscious Business Synergy Circle of the Evolutionary Leaders. We'll be exploring artificial intelligence and the future of consciousness. We'll show how by bridging generations can unleash wonderful transformational change through conscious business. And we'll also talk about why here and why now is our collective moment of choice to do so. We're also going to be discussing why the relationship of business and technology and consciousness is so fundamental to both a new earth arising and our conscious evolution. And that's because business and technology have been based in worldviews. They're actually the same. Even though our technologies are at the very forefront of 21st century scientific exploration, they are still based on a much earlier worldview of the nature of reality. And our business organizations are not just those, the way we educate our kids, our healthcare, all the way we structure ourselves in societies, at least most of those, are actually based on a 19th century science, a 19th century worldview, which even with all its incredible discoveries and abilities, technology has also been grounded in. And this 19th century worldview is based on a 19th century science, a science of a universe that is essentially mechanistic, solely material in form and made up of separate objects. It's essentially a non-living, a dead universe, bereft of meaning and of innate purpose. And in the 150 years or more since that worldview gained a huge amount of traction, so much that it really transformed our worldviews and the way we relate with each other and our planetary home, its perceptions are now being turned on their head. And instead, we're discovering at all scales of existence and many, many fields of research that our universe instead meaningfully exists, purposefully evolves from simplicity to complexity over an amazing evolutionary arc of the past 14 billion years to here and now. But in that journey of simplicity to complexity is an essentially living, sentient, conscious universe that exists and evolves as a unified entity. So reality is real, but our notions of separation are illusory. And what we're finding now is we're waking up and the evidence is supporting us. It's converging with universal wisdom teachings to bring at the very heart of our understanding of ourselves and the nature of reality, consciousness, where mind and consciousness universal and expressed at every scale of existence, including us, as fractals, as microcosms of our universe's entirety and intelligence, is showing us that we have meaning and purpose because our minds and our consciousness and that of the whole world isn't what we have. It's what we are fundamentally, what we and the whole world fundamentally are. So when we talk about business and technology and consciousness, we're now bringing consciousness and the understanding of an emergent conscious cosmology. The story of our universe and the story of us is being revealed and reimagined into this wonderful new and unitive narrative. So with all its abilities, the worldview that underpins technology can move through this evolutionary arc with us. And of course, business, with its incredible importance in our world, can also take its place now.
I am thrilled to be here to talk to you, Stephanie, about AI, consciousness, and the new requirements in the big leagues. And you have such a unique perspective, having been a tech leader for a long time, Fortune 100, anything from startups to all these exciting companies. And with your perspective, what is alive right now in this, should we call it pretty turbulent times and exciting times in business?
Yeah, thanks, Linda. It is wonderful to be here talking about this really important topic. And I'm so happy that we're talking about bringing together big thinking in technology and the thinking that is about mindfulness and consciousness. It's just really exciting and needed. What is really alive, and I love that term, alive, right now in the energy of business is fear. Leaders are fearful of new technology, that the technology has now gotten ahead of us, particularly when we talk about AI and it's all over the news. So I think leaders are a little fearful, and they need skills so that they don't just shut down and ignore the technology, which would be horrible. But they don't have the proper skills, and they need more skills to bring it forward and to make it useful and safe in the corporate environments.
And we can see that. I think everyone can see that there has been an escalation due to generative AI. You've been in the tech field for so long. Would you say, through all the technological advances that you've been through, that this time it's different?
It's different, but in a way it's the same for people. We've had so many technological advances. At least in my career, I hate to say this because it makes me seem like I've been around way longer than I have. But there's been really dangerous technology in the past, like weapons, nuclear weapons. Even the invention of the internet in itself has caused huge disruption for people. But those were technological advances that got used for lots of functional things in businesses, helped businesses grow, helped people operate. It actually helped us enormously during COVID, where people needed things like the internet to continue working and going to school. But what's different about generative AI is that in these models that are being used on human language, and remember, human language is what we as humans use to communicate. And now we're teaching machines our language. And what's interesting there, why it's different, is that as these models get more and more what we call trained, they listen to more data and they start to recognize patterns. The scale at which they can do that is much bigger than the scale of what I believe at the moment, maybe not in the future, our human capability is. So just imagine that every time you learn something, Linda, you acquire a new skill. Every person on the planet now has that skill. And every time I acquire a new skill or a new piece of knowledge or a new thought, every person on the planet acquires at the same time. This is how these generative models work, because each one of their nodes learns at the same time. So what's different really is scale. And because of changes in compute speed and capacity and a reduction in energy usage and some of these, the technology around computers, it is that evolution that has actually fueled this, this new type of technology called artificial intelligence or general intelligence.
Yeah, and the speed of which things are changing, I think, is catching most people by surprise. And you brought up COVID before. I almost see now, with the benefit of hindsight, that COVID was a good training ground, or like it was like we were practicing as leaders to come up with unprecedented policies, things we had no idea what was really going on, etc. So in a way, what we learned through the COVID pandemic is actually something that we can use now due to the speed of it, because leaders are not doing that well. And as a mind trainer in the corporate sphere, I see that what's new now for leaders is not only the speed of which this is coming at them, because that means that there are the speed of wonderful possibilities and the speed of threats, and of course, what is our competition doing? So you have this technological know-how that you need to have as a leader, and at the same time you have this whole breadth of other things you need to pay attention to, the DEI work that's been so important lately, and the ESG, the human aspect of leadership is on the agenda now in a way that it's never been before. So I have worked with you now for many years, and I've been coming into your teams, whether they've been in smaller companies, mid-size, or in the Fortune 100 world, where you've been a tech leader for quite some time. And I've been so privy to merging your view of business. You believe in conscious leadership, but you know exactly what's required in what we call the big leagues. And we're actually very excited about the fact that we've written a book together called Mind Skills, and that is about how to unleash your potential to lead in the big leagues. But as we're talking about big leadership right now, we have outlined a few things in the book because there's a shift that's necessary, right? And before we get into the shifts, how would you sort of measure how prepared leaders are right now? And what's the difference between those who are prepared to make a mind shift and make things work different, and that they would have to self-reflect, become self-aware, and do things differently? What would you say?
Oh, that's a great question. I think there's a lot of leaders out there who understand that they need to be conscious, they need to be aware, they need to be aware of what's going on in their teams. What I think is missing are real skills to implement those things in business, to start making transformational change in organizational behavior, in policy behavior, in HR, in team dynamics. And a lot of that for leaders means, what you think you're really smart about is no longer the most important thing. You could be really, really a smart, brilliant person when it comes to let's use the example of AI models, computer programming, or big data. But if you can't communicate and help your team members and your leaders and other leaders around you, your peers, feel comfortable with what you're working on, it doesn't go anywhere. So those skills of being personal, understanding how to communicate in an authentic way, listening to other people, these seem like simple things, but unless you're really focused and calm, one of the things I will say before we get off this topic of what's going on in the world, I think the fear factor, and you said escalation, like everybody's escalating these threats. I hear all kinds of terms being used. We need calm, focused decision making, and that takes a different type of person. It has nothing to do with how much knowledge you have.
And there seems to be, we're forgetting that humans will evolve from what we are today. We seem to think in the way that we show up in the business world that this is end all be all, this is how far we're going to get in evolution, and we forget that there's a trajectory that we don't know exactly what it is yet. Maybe someday we'll be privy to this information. What is it that actually determines the trajectory and the pulling, if you will? It feels like evolution wants something from us, So there seems to be a big water divider now between those leaders who are prepared to be part of this huge evolution that's happening right now, fueled by technology, but technology is also fueled by our consciousness development. And so this is a cycle. It's sort of like a spiral that that moves forward. So it's going to be really interesting, and we both know from the roundtables that we've had around leadership in New York City with high up there, different C-suite and leaders from various companies coming together, talking about what is needed right now, what do we long for in leadership right now, and it's so obvious that everybody, and the funny thing is that we invite people to these leadership roundtables not knowing exactly what their thoughts are. And surprisingly, everybody, the first thing that comes out of their mouth is, we need the human in leadership. Isn't that fascinating?
Yes, and you're exactly right. Those conversations were really, really poignant to me, because being a leader, sometimes you just have to get things done, and you lose sight of what's happening, not one level below you, but two levels below you. There's all these things about skip interviews and skip levels and all of this, and those are all perfectly fine. But leaders now need to be in the mind share of deeper parts of their organization. So two things are happening. They have to learn how to communicate and go lower, but also there's been a flattening, if you will. And if you follow what's going on in the big tech the last few months, a lot of people are getting laid off, but they're not the senior people and they're not the people doing the work. They're kind of in the middle doing tasks that are now either seen as can be done by AI or not, or in the way of communication chains. So, I joke about this a lot. Sometimes, you talk about people, there's so many people involved, but all they're doing is playing telephone with an idea. That's bad in a big organization, right?
It's a good
So
way.
I think that leaders are getting deep within themselves and saying, okay, I realize I have to communicate properly, and I have to get these people excited and get them, energetic about what we're trying to achieve. But I have this thing in the middle that's in the way. So leaders have to get better at doing it, and organizations have to get better at understanding how to open those pathways, because traditional kind of known ways of communicating just don't work.
Yeah, and from the consciousness community that I also visit and belong to, I'm always in the middle between the consciousness community and the business community, and we often talk about the problem of language, that whatever we use as language is just like, whoa, way above, or I don't know, just doesn't hit right for business leaders. And I love what you just said, that leaders need to be aware of the fact that they are part of the mind share of the organization. I think that word mind share will be something that we can all put in our pockets as we continue this work. A lot of work to do, and the business community has a lot of work to do, and hopefully we can do it together. With that, I want to say a big thank you to you, Stephanie.
It's my pleasure. It's wonderful speaking with you. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Tamara Moore. I'm calling in from Colorado, and I'm really excited today to begin a conversation across the generations as we think about this concept of new Earth rising and working together, and how do we co-create and collaborate versus complain about each other and have that conflict between the generations. I spent 2 years working in higher education at university, working with students, working with young professionals. And one day I was sitting at my desk and I started to Google, there must be a more conscious way to do this, because I could see the tension mounting between the different groups. And then we went on to create together with those groups these amazing wellness initiatives that won us award for human sustainability. And working in that conscious business space now in energy with businesses, we're starting to dig into this deeper. So I am proud to introduce our first person for the conversation, which is Lori. And Lori, you work in that innovation, startup, entrepreneurial space. Introduce yourself and tell us what you're learning.
Hi, I'm Lori, and I'm calling in from Amsterdam today. Over the past 9 years, I think I've worked with over 100 impact-driven technology companies. Some are startups, some are a little bit bigger than that. And I think what I love most about it is that every leader and every entrepreneur and that we work with, first of all, the energy that is created and the creativity that is unleashed when starting a business, when trying to do something or develop a product that has never been done before is incredible. And then secondly, also the drive and determination that, the leaders that we work with have in trying to disrupt the industries that they're part of, whether that's in sustainable energy, whether that's in creating circular products or improving our healthcare system. It's something that still touches me every day. Then answering your questions, what have I learned in the past 9 years in working with teams and leaders like this? I think first and foremost that the fact that you're starting a conscious business or business that doesn't just try to keep with business as usual or replicate old ways of doing things is the fact that it's a sustainable company doesn't mean that the leadership doesn't repeat the same mistakes of the past. So whether that's really being driven by ego, being driven by greed, or even if you're trying to build a company that is very mindful of your people, of the planet, the profit side can still take a hold of you. So of course we also see that sometimes. Something else that we see, and this is also where like my Jungian, I love Carl Jung and his work, interest is piqued, is that sometimes we also walk into companies and they're like, oh, we want to do things in a radically different way. The old way is something that is purely ego driven. So we reject all notions of ego because that's bad and that's not how you build a business. Whereas we're like, hey, and also from a Jungian perspective, if you reject anything, whether that's a part of you or something so fundamental to human beings as, having an ego, which also allows us to function in society, it starts controlling you. So it creates all sorts of weird things where now, where then personalities within companies are also rejected because they are seen as, oh, they have too big of an ego, even though they could have bring tremendous value and creativity to the company. So that's something else. But I think what has touched me most is when we've worked with clients or we've worked with teams. And we always work on, okay, if you want to scale your business, if you want to scale your company, the critical thing is to be really truthful to yourself, to have and really encourage, not just in yourself, but also in those around you, the ability to reflect on your own behavior, on your own patterns, on the culture that you're creating as leaders, to make sure that whatever vision you have and whatever values that you have and say that you want to build your company around, that you really stay true to that rather than maybe saying one thing and then doing another. And yeah, of course, I'm very fortunate to say that many of the leaders that we work with also put that into action and that have this constant reflection, critical inquiry, and open conversations with, their fellow leaders, but also with their employees around, hey, did we take the right decision there? What are some of the dilemmas that we are faced with as a company because we want to do things a little bit differently than maybe the old status quo. But of course, that's just me in my own little entrepreneurial bubble. Tamara, I know that you've worked with larger organizations, corporations, or institutions like universities. I'm very curious to hear maybe your perspective on lessons learned in trying to bring maybe different organizations or entities, young innovative enterprises, technology leaders, universities and corporations together to make sure that whatever effort is put into changing systems doesn't stay an isolated effort, but happens through co-creation and collaboration.
Yeah, thank you, Lori. And I was thinking as you were talking about ego, I think the new Earth Rising is about learning to align your soul or your authenticity with your role. And when that ego steps up and you're not feeling in your power and your authenticity, you tend to go on offense or defense, which creates offense and defense. So the collaboration piece is showing up in alignment. So I love that. I could talk all day about that. But anyway, Mariama, you intersected with the Conscious Business Institute when we were really trying to bring language and visuals to this new Earth Rising and our role in creating consciously. Could you talk about that? And then also this paradox you introduced to us that there's this need and this yearning for the timeless wisdom that we've oftentimes just forgotten about.
Yeah. Those are some good times. Yeah, people find me when they want to co-create something new. So I call myself like a translator of vision, an advocate for impact, and mostly a catalyst for real sustainable change. And what I see in my work when people want to do something new, either create it or implement it, there's two approaches, very generalized, but I'm going to give it to you very straight. So one is trust-based, knowing, like an unwavering trust and feeling that in the new and the unknown lies a huge opportunity for improvement and progress. And then the fear-based one is actually, I'm afraid of the unknown. It's very uncertain. I don't know where to begin. I don't know where to go. So I'll just stay here, stagnant energy. So that means that you're moving actually nowhere, maybe backwards. Definitely no progress. And then you can say, you know what, all of these change management approaches say, well, you know, it's all about the why. Convince them why it is important. And I say, that's important too, but it's more so about remembrance. So where do we come from actually? And that's kind of buried, or it's dormant. It's this dormant collective wisdom that we all have. And I say that it is ingrained in our DNA. It's part of who we are. If you look at Maslow's basic human needs pyramid, it's in there. And what it is this sense of belonging, and it's longing to be part of something, a community, together with others. And what we've seen is that for the past, 2-3 generations, it's all about me, I, myself. There's not really an us. And if we look at these native tribes, so I'm half African, which is a huge continent, but it's filled with these different and various tribes, and they all organize themselves and work together as a community. And so it's really all about us and our environment. And they understand that actually there's this huge complex web that is interdependent, and they're part of an ecosystem. So if I do something, it will affect you, vice versa, and the room around us or the environment around us. And when you have that notion in you, you behave differently, because it's not just about me anymore. It's about every one of us, right? And this is that dormant wisdom that lies within all of us. And if we wake up to that, change or going in or stepping into the new actually doesn't become something that we should be fearful of or that's uncertain. It's really like a journey back into who we are and going back to source in a way. So that makes it really beautiful and also light. And I think if we would approach the unknown and the new world in that way, we can build beautiful things together. That's the prerequisite.
I love that. So as we're thinking about creating this new Earth Rising together, I'm curious for both of you, how does the older generations help support your unique voice and viewpoint?
So for me, it's all about dialogue. So I think Lori also touched on that, about inquiry and co-creation. So of course, it all starts within us, but it also is a dialogue and a conversation that we together should have and really talk about the legacy. the world that we live in, how do we want to shape it right now? And how do we want to shape it for future generations to come? Because we all have a stake in that, and we all can impact that in a way which is either, a little bit stagnant or really progressive. And I think there we can build things together. But it starts with a conversation. What about you, Lori?
Well, I think first of all, throughout my career, I've always had many positive, inspiring role models. So women in positions of power that in some way or form really inspired me. I mean, if I look at my family, like my grandmothers never did anything beyond, primary education or primary school. My mom was the first in her family to go to college. And for us, those are things that have become super normal. So that in and of itself, I think is good to recognize and to realize. Then if I look at the generations that precede us, I think maybe my ask would be a little bit more practical, like help us navigate the spaces or environments or rooms that we don't feel comfortable in, and that we might would benefit from having support in navigating that. And also being able to have truly honest conversations. I mean, I spoke about ego. I spoke about the importance of, critical inquiry and looking at oneself and one's behaviors and patterns to make sure we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. And this is a two-way street, but then just being able to have open conversations and being challenged when we say one thing and do another would be the other thing that I would love.
Wow. Well, as you were talking about mentoring and role modeling, I think that's two-way. So we think of it as top down, but let's role model and mentor each other. I had a young professional really challenge me and say, when are you going to spend your social capital and that authority that you have to move things along and to progress? And then you're both inspiring me to think about what bold question could we rally around together and explore. So I was just thinking, if our success was guaranteed, what bold steps would we create together to create this new earth rising? And that's inspiring me. So that's the challenge, I think, as we move forward, keep these conversations going and make space for them. Any other parting words?
No, I like to challenge the audience to join the conversation and maybe also think of who they could mentor and who they could ask for them to be their mentor as well.
Thank you both.
Lee, it's so lovely to be exploring this topic with business and technology and consciousness with you. And our sort of exploration really focuses on why here and why now. So I'd love to ask you as a young leader, as a young conscious leader, as a young entrepreneur, with this emergent understanding, this new and unitive understanding and narrative of a living, evolving, unified, conscious universe of innate meaning and purpose and evolutionary purpose, what do you feel is the most important message of this understanding, literally for here and now?
Well, I think it's exactly what you just said. You used a word that in your introduction that really resonated with me, and it was belong. And I think as we talk about evolution and we think about our next step and where we have to go from here, we are sort of returning to something that we all maybe already understand, or quite possibly do understand already, that we already belong together. We belong here. We belong on this path with that brings all of these pieces together. And I think that is so crucial, because otherwise we're fighting against evolution, and we're not going to win. But then we begin to feel frustrated and hopeless and sad. And I think, like, when we feel disconnected from each other and it feels like things aren't working, we've come away from this innate understanding and wisdom that we belong in. And so coming back to our real understanding of each other and how we belong together, I think is just so important, because like you were saying, here and now, we don't really have another choice. And I think that's the most important part, is that there is a path forward, and we are well on our way there.
I love that. And, as a cosmologist, when I'm asked what does a cosmologist do or what's it mean, for me, it's about being curious about the nature of reality. So my whole life has been sort of an exploration of a world and worlds, that are way beyond what we might perceive as our universe. And so I've always experienced the world, perhaps as spiritual seekers of thousands of years have, as a completely interconnected, wondrous expression of divine creation, of which we are both creation and co-creators. But also, what I love about this emergent understanding, which is scientifically based, and I'm a scientist, of course, as holding many other hats, is that it's evidence based. It's not just a hope in a way; it's authentic hope, because it's grounding us in the reality that unity isn't an aspiration, it's our existential reality. And of course, the other aspect, which I'd love you to speak of your experience too, is that it converges with universal wisdom teachings, which I've loved, honored, and respected and studied since childhood as well. So we're in this incredible emergent moment where it's almost as though the entirety of our human journey of exploration is coming to this homecoming, to remember who we really are, to then sort of, invite us into this next step of our adventure of conscious evolution. So I'd love to hear some of your journey and why you're feeling this is such an incredible moment, both of choice but of opportunity.
Yeah, so I've been so fortunate to have a foundation of some of this ancient wisdom, this just from really being able to travel all over the world. My parents exposed me to so much growing up, and then I went up and I lived in this world, and I embarked on a rather corporate lifestyle, and so I think it's been very much my personal journey, building these two parts of my foundation and creating something that is relevant and resonant to me. That's certainly been a personal journey. But I think, as you mentioned, it does speak to sort of like the different factions of people that we have in our lives, the different factions of people in the world, some of which feel very strongly connected to this ancient wisdom, to these to the wisdom that really we all have inside of us. Many of us just are more sensitive to it, or have been exposed to it. So many people just haven't been exposed to some of these teachings, and so it doesn't resonate immediately with them. But then we also have our scientists, and we have our mathematicians, and we have these very analytical, logical thinkers. And I think, as you were just talking, what is so special about this moment is that those two types or ways of thinking or ways of being are coming together, and they're proving each other right. All these conversations where, well, I believe in this, but you can't prove it. Now we can prove it. And then we have all of this scientific proof and thought and theory that's backed by thousands of years of people looking up at the stars and discovering in ways that we don't even yet understand. And so I think it certainly, it lends validity to my, my personal journey of bringing all of this together. But I think it has and will continue to allow us broadly to come together, the different types of people in the world, and all of our different beliefs to really come together. And like you said, have this
I love that. And Jess, what you're saying as well is that, one of the things that's been able to come out of this emergent cosmology is a narrative, because we tell stories. We're story sharing species, and we've told, stories based on our underlying narratives since the get-go, I guess. And what we've been able to do as part of this emergence is to come together to articulate a unitive narrative that can underpin and frame us as we move forward. And what you were saying, I think I loved what you were saying about the many voices. I'm hoping to write my third book of my trilogy called Many Voices, One Heart. And it's the story of us and I hope our potential now. But, you know, the unity narrative speaks to both our inner and outer, our being and our doing. And no, you know, and again, a complete dance and convergence of those two aspects of the wholeness of who we are. It also speaks to the sacred marriage that I sometimes call it, and certainly the ancients did, of the divine feminine and divine masculine within us. And the ancient traditions, I'm sure you're aware, speak to when we balance those attributes within us, and of course they're within all of us, then a divine child, that third beautiful, creative, emergent aspect of our wholeness comes forward. And you mentioned earlier the arts, but you know, we're creative beings. And so as this all comes forward and is not just understood, but experienced and embodied, it seems to me that not only will we enable the complementarity of feminine and masculine attributes to sort of, you know, throughout our lives, but more and more in business, more and more in technology, and obviously through conscious business, but it brings that creativity and that emergence of that third aspect of our wholeness, the divine child, that playfulness, that joyfulness, that naughtiness, that all the to be embodied. I'd love you to speak to that, if you might.
Sure. I think there's so much. Every time you speak, I'm like, that's what a perfect way to put that, you know. So we could go forever, but I think that sort of like gendered energy that you talked about, that is so important. It has really come up, I think, in public conversation recently, and I think there is a sort of when our minds are being expanded, especially in a short period of time, there can be a little bit of tension amongst us. And I think people have very rigid understandings of gender. It sort of underpins some like foundational understandings that we have about ourselves and about each other. And I think as we begin to expand what it means to hold masculine and feminine energy within ourselves, it will be difficult. I think a lot of this, you know, when you talk about it, it sounds easy, but we both know that, you know, when you're out in the real world and Dr. Jude isn't on your shoulder anymore, there is tension and learning that has to be done. But I think that is just so powerful, being able to come outside of ourselves a little bit, to understand that our foundation, what keeps us safe and secure, is not that we hold one masculine or feminine energy. It's not our rigid understandings of it. Our foundations are much broader, are much more cosmic than that. And so we can let go of some of our traditional thoughts about this and really be able to take these two things together. And you also mentioned technology, and I think that's so important, because sometimes we consider technology, especially as AI is coming out, it sort of seems like it is separate from us, right? Like we are humans, and then technology sits over here, and then there are robots and all sorts of things that are happening over there. But we are creating them, and it is a type of creativity. It speaks to how expansive we can be, that we've created something like AI, and because we're creating it, it reflects us. And that's why I think it's so important that the people at the forefront of these industries, the people that are coding, the people that are writing code for these AI programs, that they look like the communities that we're in, you know. So if you have, you know, the same sort of very rigid person creating all this technology, that is what is going to be reflected. And as tech gets smarter and smarter than us, you know, it still can only grow and exponentially evolve in what it knows. And so I think it really is important that as we bring like our understandings of gender and power and energy and playfulness and naughtiness, that we really begin to reflect it into our creative pursuits, whether it's technology or the arts or business.
I love that. And there's I know that we're going to continue in our session to have that conversation on AI. I'd love a different word, because in this emergent cosmology, nothing is artificial. So maybe we can find another word that expresses and more honors this creativity, because it seems to me that, what we might be, if we can wake up to remember we're inseparable, and this conscious evolution that is inviting us, it's an invitation of our whole universe, I feel, and our planetary home for us. Maybe we can enter into a co-evolutionary partnership, whereas what we've hitherto understood to be AI, whose superpower is data collection and putting it together, and our superpower is that we are grounded in the source of all being, that we are grounded in that holistic understanding of who we are. We're remembering this, and that we have intuition as our superpower. So maybe we can sort of bring superpowers together and have a whole new Marvel universe that takes us all forward. The other thing I'd love to sort of ask you, but before, my background also for 25 years was in corporate life, and I became, the group finance director of 2 $500 million turnover businesses that operate in 36 countries. So I know the challenges. And but I also know the potential when we can start to wake up to this new realization and much more co-creative, co-evolutionary progress together in all that we do. So this is the science of love. I was at a wonderful gathering last night with an amazing organization called Reboot the Future. And their mission is the golden rule. Treat others and our planetary home as we would wish to be treated. And many different versions of that. But they're all saying the same thing about relationship and right relationship. And so I'd just like to end our time together. I don't want to end our time together, but we have to end our time together. Your journey and your wisdom is profound. And I really appreciate that. And we all have wisdom within us, but often our journeys don't encourage it to come forward. So I would like to ask you, what would you say to other young business entrepreneurs, leaders who perhaps haven't had this incredible journey that you've had of life experience? What would you say to them? How would you invite them into this adventure together?
It is. Thank you for saying that. It is always such a great time to hang with you and chat, and it is a great way to come out of sort of the focused corporate Monday through Friday life that I'm living right now. And I think that if I were, as I invite the people around me, my friends and my coworkers, to have these conversations, I can only speak to what I'm doing right now and what I have found myself doing over the last few months and years as the world has started to look more and more scary, is actually to lean on the understandings that we have as business professionals, for example, in being able to look at a structure that's not working and reimagine it. And I think leaning on that imagination piece is so crucial. And for me, I find it to be very frightening. I like structure, and even if the existing structure maybe isn't working out too well, imagining, burning it all down and starting over is very, very terrifying for me. But it does offer, I think, a different way of thinking, using, the skills and the thought processes that we have to create something that is more equitable, to create something that is rooted in, like you were talking, like the capital L, love, that is our foundation. I think using the skills that we already have to reimagine a different future, and what I encourage myself to do, and what I encourage people when having these conversations, is that there isn't a right answer, and you don't have to come to an answer either. I think the most crucial part, especially for people that sort of have their heads down, focused on a certain way of life, is just to lift up and imagine that there is a different life to live. There is a different way of living. You know, this path to evolutionary growth, like we spoke about at the very beginning, it exists and we're on it. You know, so what can the world look like? What will the world look like? And then I think, because we have all the skills to build it already. So it is really just that piece of lifting our heads up and imagining something different that I think is so crucial, and something that I, am excited to continue to do. And really, it is such a privilege to be able to talk to you about it, because I feel every time we have one of these conversations, I feel 4 steps ahead already. So it's a real privilege and an honor, and I would love to hear your thoughts. If I could ask you one question at the very end, is what advice would you give, to me and to people like me who are sort of at the beginning of their path of growth, and imagining how they can, really be a part of this community and move it forward.
Thank you. I two things that have stood me in my journey. One is, and it does sound easy, it's not, but it is simple. Keep showing up and get out of the way. Keep showing up and get out of the way. And what that means, in a way, is that the question that you always ask, and I know you're already asking it, but it's a question I always ask myself, is what would love do? What would love do? And follow that guidance. And also appreciating that, we do have incredible superpowers when we're able to open ourselves to them, and the intuition is top of the list. So I love what you're doing. I'm so appreciative of it. And the other thing is, you are what I would call a soul model. You're not a role model, you're a soul model. So inviting all of the incredibly diverse soul models
Peter?
Let me tell you about the lie we've been living in for centuries, millennia. They say peace through domination's justifiable while building up the arsenal. All the sages and wise men of the ages were guiding us to look within ourselves. But the fear so divisive and the lie so enticing, we keep spinning this hell. Shine your light, you are the future being told. Cultivating seeds we've sown. 99 days of peace through unity. 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 99 days of peace through unity.
Hello and welcome to Conscious Living here on 100.5 FM CFRO in Vancouver. And my name is Mark Caron. We are here on the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I'm really excited to be here today. And it's really an auspicious week happening around the world. It is World Unity Week, and it's kicking off 99 Days of Peace. And I got to say, I've really been honored to be part of this program. And we've been at it for the past 4 days, bringing leaders from around the world talking about unity, talking about peace, and the things that need to happen in the world to really create a better everyday life for all of humanity. And I've been blessed to meet a beautiful soul by the name of Ben Bowler, who I'm happy to call my friend and acquaintance. And Ben is the executive director of Unity Earth, which is a global platform dedicated to empowering unity, purpose, and peace. Unity Earth is a primary conveyor of World Unity Week every July around the mid-year solstice, and Peace Week every September around the International Day of Peace. Ben, thanks for joining me today as this last-minute opportunity that we came up with to really share your work that you're doing. So welcome to the program. Welcome to Conscious Living.
Oh, Mark, it's great. It's great to be here with you, and great to be sitting down to talk about something that we're both passionate about, which is this amazing community coming together and the opportunity to broadcast and tell a new story. Of course, the solstice is in June. You can tell I'm probably haven't had enough sleep when I wrote that. I said July, but World Unity Week is every year around the mid-year solstice in June, and obviously the International Day of Peace, which we're building up to in September as well. We have an embrace around that, which is Peace Week. So in between World Unity Week and Peace Week is the 99 Days of Peace through Unity, and we've just kicked it off. We're on day 4 here today, and working with you, Mark, and the team at Hubcast to help broadcast a lot of the amazing content. Has just been so much fun and a privilege, and we're halfway through the week.
Yeah, we're literally at the halfway point. We've now just I think 8 shows a day, 4 days. We've done 38 programs broadcasting live around the world with people and leaders from around the world, which has really been incredible. And I think it's really a testament to, the way the world has changed over the years, especially the past few years, because of the pandemic. We're doing a lot of these things virtually and bringing in people from around the world. And, we've done a really great job. I really want to thank Peter, too, at Hubcast, and, for really bringing this stuff and these programs to the world in a different way that is live, that is interactive, so that people around the world can actually be part of it in these Zoom environments. And, I think it's really great to be able to have this opportunity to share your mission. And what I'm really curious about, Ben, because, I've been behind the scenes, I've been watching you all week. And I want to thank you for taking the time out of this busy week, because, we know what it's been like that in what we've been doing. I just thank you for the spontaneous nature that we decided to do this program today. So thank you for that. And what I want to know, Ben, is how the heck did you get into what you're doing? What's your story, my friend?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I think it's our story. Really, I think the more we do this work, the more incredible souls around the world you meet, like you, like Peter, like everyone in World Unity Week. And I think the one defining feature of everybody, everyone's different and diverse and coming from so many different backgrounds and still different to beliefs. And, there's a tremendous amount of diversity there, which is beautiful and essential. I suppose the one defining factor is, at some level, we all feel called, and we feel called into this moment. We feel called into this work. And, there's so many courageous leaders out there that have devoted their lives to somehow advancing the cause of human evolution, to somehow push it forward despite all the odds and the limitations and the not knowing and the external pressures and our own fragilities, just to somehow find a way to answer that call at an individual level. And now as we find each other and we find that our skills and our experiences and our passions are so way beyond just complementary, they're like magic when we come together. There's a new earth rising when we pool our talents and our skills and our experiences in a way that is collective. It's a force like I don't think the world has ever had before, in the sense of what we can do together as a community. So, my story, well, I suppose like many people that I talk to as well, Mark, I probably had a sense of calling from a young age. And, where does that come from? I didn't ask for it. I didn't choose it. It was just there. And, I had experiences as a child where I was aware of just like the wonder and the majesty of existence and life. And some of those, I guess you would call them awakening moments. So, there were a couple of ones when I was quite younger, and then I grew up in an environment where I was exposed to a lot of different cultures. My father's a scientist, and he traveled a lot to China and right across Australia with Indigenous communities, and my brothers and sisters and I got to experience a lot of that with him. The real hero of the story is my mum, who held the fort and raised 6 kids while Dad was off doing his thing, and his thing was amazing, but it was, but Mum was the one who held it together at home. But those experiences with my dad out in the desert with Aboriginal communities in Western China as a 12-year-old, I was there for 3 months. So I was from the sheltered suburbs of Canberra. My dad was at the Australian National University in the capital city of Australia, which is Canberra. And I grew up in, one of the most sheltered places on earth, which is the suburbs of Canberra. And, to go from there to Western China, up on the Tibetan plateau with Tibetan communities, and of course with the Chinese culture and community as well, in 1985, mind you. So it was before China had really opened up. And we're in a city called Xining, which is a few million people, and there really were no other Westerners there. Occasionally you'd get a backpacker kind of hitching a ride through in a truck on his way to Lhasa. But it was pretty wild. And I guess those sorts of experiences can't help but expand your consciousness. We all know the power of travel, right, at any age, and engaging with another culture and meeting another culture and realizing, hey, wow, the world's a lot bigger than I thought it was. It's a lot more rich. It's a lot more diverse. It's just a lot more. And I suppose they would have had, and no doubt had, big influences on me and my thinking and my awareness. And, you know, in Aboriginal Australia, it's a huge part of our story that my father was involved in the discovery of what became the oldest human remains ever found in the Australian continent. So in 1969, with his discovery of Mungo Lady, and then in 1974 with his discovery of Mungo Man, completely changed our understanding of human occupation in Australia. That's a whole story in itself. And so, you know, at that point, just to sort of give you an idea, Mark, the scientists in Australia back in the 60s were thinking, how long have Aboriginal people been here? Was it before Christ or after Christ? They were having those sorts of conversations. These discoveries set the timeline back beyond 40,000 years of continuous living culture, fully modern humans, and they were reverentially, spiritually buried. There was ochre and ash and ceremony of the ritualistic of the burial. So I grew up with all of that, right? So there's multi layers, intercultural kind of answer to it. There's the ultimate answer, which is the mystery itself. Why does anyone get called? Right. I mean, ultimately, that's one of those things that's just in a box outside of our ability to really answer. And then there are many different other answers inside. I will say I've always been fascinated and, you know, to the point of bordering on obsessed with the diversity of human spirituality and all of our different cultures, our religious traditions, the prophets and the saints, and the great spiritual leaders throughout history, and our religious, you know, cultures and dynamics, and our spiritual movements, old, ancient, new, emerging, all of them fascinate me. So I guess I've just had a passion. You know, some people it's golf or surfing, but for me it's human spiritual cultures. And how do we find ways to connect them and to find a greater whole that allows us all to be who we are in an interconnected way where everything belongs? So that's just been a part of my journey. I've had many different experiences along the pathway, but that's a little bit of an attempt to answer of, you know, how did I get here doing what I'm doing? So, Mark, you want me to come and unmute you? That's a good idea, because let's get your voice in here. All right.
We've been talking about it all week, the mute, the unmute thing. I've had the power all week until it's a show I'm doing.
I think I might just talk for another hour. How about that? No.
Well, hey, and I'm sure the wisdom that you would impart on us would be well worth every moment. So, you know, Ben, thank you so much for sharing your story. And that's really quite incredible. And you said so many things that I certainly resonate with. And, you know, the founder of Conscious Living, Andrew Resmer, who started this over about 15 years ago, was really part of his mission as well, was to bring in voices to raise consciousness, to help change the course of humanity, and believing that we are here to be in service and to help one another. And, you know, at the end of the day, and all day, every day, really, why let's just all get along, you know, and this is the thing that I really loved. And I've been so inspired this week about the program you have put together, because you have brought in so many people that, you know, really resonate with me, the learning that these people have brought, the inspiration for myself, and I know for others, because I've heard it for the past 4 days with the programs we've been leading. And it's just really incredible. So, you know, you talked about Indigenous people raising consciousness and the work around the globe, and I certainly agree. And in your programming, I really want to acknowledge the Indigenous content and programming that you brought to the table, because we've had so many great Indigenous teachings, and we just had the it was the World Prayer and Peace Day that we brought in live from California, just outside of Mount Shasta, with Chief Averill, and a lot of the people you brought in there, and they brought into their program to really impart, you know, some beautiful, beautiful teachings, as well as, you know, share some of the stories about, you know, the history of the indigenous people in North America, and not only North America, but bringing, we've had people from Peru and India come in, and indigenous people from all indigenous cultures. And I think that's really powerful because, one of the programs we do is called Spirit Plant Medicine Conference, where we really honor and look at the indigenous teachings, the indigenous plant medicines. And Chief Phil, who spoke at our conference last year, said it so beautiful yesterday when he just talked about plant medicine. He wasn't talking about psychedelic plants. He said psychoactive plants and how plants can help us change, and the wisdom that, we look through history, the thousands of years where these indigenous teachings and the way of life, it wasn't about money and all these things that we've created in our kind of Caucasian society or Western culture, however we want to define that, and how we bring it all together, talking about nature, the planet, the water, just the woman talking about salmon today was really impactful because, over the course of time, Tasha, who's our regular host of the program, we do the Vancouver International Film Festival every year, and we get an opportunity to really take a look at these documentaries and speak to the people who this work isn't affecting, talking about the pipeline and how that affects, the planet, the people, nature. Even let's talk about commerce, around that, and the impact that has on the planet that so many people don't necessarily consider. And to me, that's a big part of what consciousness is the awareness of our actions, of our thoughts, of our words, not just on ourselves, but on the people that we touch every day, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, there's a lot there, Mark, to kind of like dive into. And it's beautiful. The diversity of groups coming together is amazing. It's like really rich. And I think we're ready. Everyone in their own way has been preparing in their group and doing their thing. And even if their thing was something that included the whole, but now we're finding each other. And again, like me as a kid from Canberra going to Western China, we're realizing that the whole is bigger than we thought and is broader and more diverse. And, and we're expanding in that sense. And so part of it is just building bigger containers and spaces which can hold more and more and more, and building capacity. And that's part of why it's so exciting to be working with you and Peter and the Hubcast team, is because you're building our capacity. And I really want to touch on that because it's a really important part of what's allowing us to go beyond where we've been before. Let me talk a little bit about World Peace and Prayer Day. Chief Arvel Looking Horse, back in 1995, selected June 21st to be World Peace and Prayer Day, and started it. Obviously, June 21 is the solstice, right? It's the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere. It's the winter solstice here in the southern hemisphere. And so, since 1995, World Peace and Prayer Day has been June 21, which is going to be today, right, when this goes out, and that platform has been going around the world. World Peace and Prayer Day has traveled to South Africa with Archbishop Tutu. Arvel went there, came to Australia 20 years ago in 2003, up in the bush and up in the Grampians Mountains. And I was blessed and fortunate enough to be one of a few thousand people that was there back when I was a young fella. And it had a big impact on me, Mark. And actually, I remember, because the smoking tobacco is it's not part of our Aboriginal spiritual culture. It's obviously very much part of the North American indigenous culture. But Chief Arvel was standing at this big fire and this huge ring of people around him, and he's in the middle smoking a cigarette. And it really kind of like struck me as an image. And, it was a sacred prayer smoke. And he put out a call for leadership. And I remember it really landed in my heart. It was a beautiful moment. And I'm sure it landed in, just about everybody's hearts who was there. Very powerful. So that was 20 years ago today, right? And when you spoke before about the pandemic and 2020 and how everything changed, we feel that 2020 is kind of going to be considered an axial year, and that really we're in the third year of a new dispensation. We're in the beginning of a new era because everything changed. The way we work, the way we travel, the way we relate, the way we interact, everything transformed through that global initiation in 2020. Even the fact that we were all 8 billion of us having the same experience, which had never happened before. Never happened before. And, there are major events like the Super Bowl or people going to the moon, but that's only still a fraction of humanity. But the pandemic was everyone. And so through that collective initiation in 2020, we evolved to something that is new opportunities began, new doors opened up. And it was really during that period of the early 2020, Mark, that together with key creators like John Raymer from the Sign Network and Emmanuel Kunzelman from Purpose Earth and our friends at the United Religions Initiative, this idea of world unity, we kind of emerged. And it emerged through us as like, well, let's do something while we can. Everybody's at home. We can, we've got everyone's attention. Let's do something around the mid-year solstice. And we realized there's so much around this week. There's the UN International Day of Yoga on June 21 as well. There's World Peace and Prayer Day. There's the UN Refugee Day, which was yesterday, 20th of June. There's the signing of the UN Charter in 1945. Now, some of your listeners may be highly skeptical of the UN, but the fact is the Charter is based upon high ideals, and it really was a step forward for humanity. Imperfect as the institution may well be, it was still something that was an attempt to limit war and to end war in its early intention. So the whole date around this particular period of time is so rich with all these different events that World Unity Week was like, well, let's throw our arms around all of it and hold all these different things together. The International Day of Yoga, together with the solstice, which is already celebrated by Indigenous people all around the world. World Peace and Prayer Day, the other celebrations that people have around this time. It's also World Localization Day on the 21st of June. I'm sure it's a lot more things for us to discover around this week. So that was really the intention to connect these things together in an interconnected way. And John Raymer from the Sign Network, who's really in many ways the architect of the convergence, allowing anybody to come on and do a program, to host a room, to convene their group. So we're now in our fourth year. And it's been something that has been an evolution the whole step through. And as I was saying before, Mark, just to close on this, and then I'll throw it back to you. What Hubcast is doing and what you're doing is allowing us to up our game in terms of the broadcast quality of this amazing content. So today we had World Peace and Prayer Day from up near Mount Shasta, live on location, incredible content coming under the leadership of Chief Arvel. We had the legendary Vandana Shiva in a dialogue with Linda Tucker, who is also a legendary global leader of the White Lions Trust in South Africa, having this extraordinary conversation about the lion and the seed. And then we also had George Floyd's uncle just with us, talking about with the Ungarn Institute about racism and how do we heal it and how do we go forward. It's such a problem for everyone all around the world and historically and presently. So all of these things happen just in one day. And if you think about how they all hold together and how they're interconnected and, what happens next, the content we have is extraordinary. We know it is world-changing and transformational. And unless we can get it out to a broad enough audience, it's not going to have the impact it needs to have. So part of that is we got to up our game. There's no point just bemoaning the fact. There's no point just saying, oh, where's all the people? We've got to get better. Somebody said, we got to learn to throw a better party, right? And so part of it is doing that. We're taking responsibility for, becoming that attractor, which can bring more people in, Mark, more people like you, more people who are already on the journey, who have already got the calling, who have already given their life and their hearts to something meaningful and purposeful, to find other people and to connect and to collaborate and to become something we've never been before. And so Hubcast, Peter Young, God bless him, and you and the whole team at Hubcast, because allowing us to improve how this looks. One of our dear friends, Peter Blaise Corcoran, said his mentor used to tell him, if you've got something which you think can save the world, right? Help the world, change the world. If you've got something you think can change the world, then it needs to look like it can change the world. And I think that's what Hubcast is allowing us to do, is to up the quality of the broadcast. And that's a very, very exciting thing. And we're still learning. We're here in June. We're getting set for September. Peace Week 2023 is going to be amazing, and another step and another breakthrough. So deep bows to you, my friend, and gratitude to you and the Hubcast team, because together, when we pull our gifts and our talents and our resources in a spirit of generosity, which Peter Young has just jumped into this. He said, yes, we're going to do it. This is part of his mission. And when we do that, and you're doing it, you're like, all in, I'm going, this is part of my mission. When we do that together, then there's nothing that can stop us. And there's no limit to what we can be a part of creating together.
Absolutely. And again, so much there to unpack. You said, first, I completely agree, because 2020 was certainly a bizarre change of life for so many people. And for those people who know me, one of the things that really inspired me was, I do a lot of work with Tony Robbins, and he did these crazy virtual events. And I got so inspired. I said, I want to be part of doing stuff like this. And I've known Peter since 2018 with some of the work that we've been doing as a client. And I just said, Peter, can we do this? Can we do this? And I love the fact that he was always willing to let's find the way to bring people together in a different way. To, the virtual, that we can bring people in from around the world to interact with our guests in our panel and ask questions, that we can do hybrid events. We could do a live event with a virtual audience at the same time. And it's to use these tools, like you say, to bring us together, because it's connectedness. We've had so much separation. You talk about diversity was a big one. And yesterday's theme being oneness, which is a big part of my life. And when we realize, even though how different we are very much the same, and we're all interconnected in a way that creates a global oneness. And when we can work within that framework and, come from a position of love and understanding and not judgment, and how can we help, how can we serve, and to inspire people, because, experience is the best teacher, right? And it's, with some of these things that we've been doing this week, like every day at 12 o'clock, we have Teresa Collins doing the global
coherence pulse, the global coherence pulse.
The meditations, the sound journeys, the things that we have going on, to give people not just, a bunch of people talking and sharing knowledge and information, but people sharing wisdom, which is a big difference, and providing experiential opportunities that actually work online. And if I want to say one thing, to whether you're watching at home, you're listening on the air, it's morning, noon, evening, wherever it is where you are, is to really, I challenge you to embrace and consider embracing this new virtual interactive world, because a live stream on a website is one thing, and it's great. But I believe if we're going to build community, if we're going to bring people together, Zoom is a great platform where we can have our cameras on, we can be talking back and forth, and really having that opportunity that you don't get from a standard live stream. And I think we've proven that really well this week, right? And really, we've brought a lot of people together. I don't know how many thousands of people around the world have been watching what we're doing, but, it's not just knowledge and information, it's experience and wisdom that will change your life, will change the lives of others. Because when we transform, other people around us transform. And it's that ripple of the stone in the pond, right? And as that goes out, it's how do we make a difference? One word, one nice thing. We don't know what somebody's going through in their day. And if we can meet them with love and compassion and empathy and understanding versus judgment and criticism, we're opening a safe, sacred space for transformation to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? And I was saying that, Ben, because I know you and I could be talking for hours, and we already have been for the past 4 days, but we've got a great musical experience with Kristen Hoffman, and I'd like you to maybe introduce her and what she does, who she is, because she's just a beautiful soul, a beautiful musician. But I'm going to let you frame up our next little segment for us, if you would.
Well, Kristen is one of the most special beings in the cosmos. I think she's an angel, really, and she's given her life to her incredible gift of music. I mean, Kristen is a genius and one of the best singers you'll ever hear, one of the best songwriters you'll ever hear, lyrically, musically. She's just, and she had a fork in the road in her own career, Mark, at one point where she could have kept doing the thing with, Capitol Records and trying to break through and be commercial. And she made a different choice. She went down, though, I'm going to use my art in the service of humanity and to elevate consciousness. And boy, she has just delivered that in spades. Tonight, on Wednesday night at 7 p.m. in the Zoom room.
Well, you're in Australia. Let's just say Wednesday. It's Tuesday. Oh, well, yeah, Wednesday.
No, Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. That's today, right? I mean, then like later today in America. I know it's a Tuesday night for you, but it's always hard trying to define a day in these global events. But Wednesday at 7 p.m., Kristen will be releasing her album Rainshine, which she's been working on for 7 years, live, the world premiere inside World Unity Week, which is amazing. But you'll get a sense of it from this video. She is so tapped in and she is so devoted to bringing the art and music as a tool for elevating consciousness and to lifting us all up. And our theme, which you can see in my backdrop here of New Earth Rising, this actually comes from this piece of music you're about to show, Mark. So we had a symposium in February for World Interfaith Harmony Week, and our theme was Visions for a New Earth. And Kristen came on, and this is totally spontaneous. This is improvisation, but she just starts, she calls it a soul om, and she just goes and she lets the spirit take over. And she brought through the phrase New Earth Rising, for a whole theme of World Unity Week comes from this piece. So I'm really excited to.
But before we go to it, Ben, I just want to say, if you're listening to this on air and you're driving, please be careful, because this will take you away. It's just beautiful. And that's what I wanted to say to that, because music can change your life. So thank you for that great introduction, Ben. And let's enjoy the beautiful gift of Kristen Hoffman.
Yeah.
it is possible. Just hold it, sing it, dance it, feel it, envision it, believe it, love it, share it, hold hands with it, whisper to it in the night, pillow talk with it, dance your feet deep into the earth of it. Sing that song that sings on and on and on and on and on and on and on, from heart to 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 heart. Raise your candles high, feel those flames unite, that sacred one flame. There is a new earth rising. Now is the time, now is the time. Compassion torches rise, uniting with peace, flame, and unity lamp. We are lighting the flame again, heart to 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 heart. All creatures of this planet, all cosmic beings, all angels, all guides, all ancestors, hear our call. Be with us now, be with us now, as we lift up with you, with you, with you as one family. There's a new earth rising. Hear it on the wind, hear it on the wind, hear it on the wind, hear it in your heart, the winds of 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 your heart. There's a new earth rising. There's a new earth rising. A new earth rising. Carry it with you, this new earth rising.
Wow. How incredible was that? You know, it's like, I'm with you there, Ben. And I want to say to anybody, if you're listening to this on air this evening, really, we're actually streaming this live the day before you're hearing this on the radio. And I want to encourage you to go take a look at our website, consciousliving.radio.org, because the video will be up there and you'll be able to see with Kristen's performance how everybody was involved, how we brought people from around the world in to enjoy her music, which is what we are working on moving forward, to bring people in on a better way. And it's something we're looking forward to doing as we move forward with Conscious Living Radio as well. So Ben, thank you for bringing Kristen into my awareness.
Oh, well, you're welcome, brother. She's someone who is a great blessing and a gift to everybody. So I think, you know, her mission is a global one, and you can feel the holiness and of her intention and her devotion. Yeah, she's
my crown chakra's tingling right now.
Yeah. She's a blessing to the whole planet. For sure. So her concert is Wednesday, 21st of June. So that's probably today, as people listening, at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And you can find it. You can go to the1.stream. You'll be able to watch it and enjoy it for free. The 1.stream will take you there, Mark. And a lot of the content from World Unity Week is going out there.
Well, and that's what I wanted to say is everything that we've done and broadcast in this past week is available there as well. So you can catch Chief Avril and the World Prayer and Peace Day talks there. You can catch it all from everything we've already done. And we are starting another 4 days first thing tomorrow morning as well. So there's a lot more, a lot more coming down the internet pipe, as we would say. And it's just incredible that we're able to do this work. And, you know, I just want people to really take a moment and ask yourself, what can I do differently? If I was to do one thing, because it's not about going out and eating the whole pumpkin in one bite. You know, we want to be able to, you know, small changes make a big difference over time. And if we can multiply that from 8 billion people on the planet doing one small thing to change the world based on the environment, you know, meditation, global coherence, whatever that is, it doesn't mean you have to go necessarily change your life, you know, upside down tomorrow to be part of this movement. It's putting it in your heart first and making a difference one step at a time.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah. Ben, please tell people how they can find and see everything that we've been doing again, please.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you just go to worldunityweek.org or unity.earth, or certainly worldunityweek.org would be a good place to find all the incredible content for World Unity Week, and then our platform of unity.earth, which is one of the primary conveners of World Unity Week. You'll find a lot of stuff there, a lot of history, a lot of ways in. But I love what you said there, Mark, about, for people just to do one thing. Sometimes it can be overwhelming, and you can look at people
absolutely
who are doing amazing things. I think, wow, I feel so far away from that. I feel so removed from that like a Kristen Hoffman or a Chief Arva looking, or whoever it might be. But I think it's just, like you said, finding, what's the one thing you can do? What are you called to do? We don't have to do everything. Nobody's going to do everything. So just doing what you're called to do, I think that's the answer. And there's the freedom and there's the joy, in that, because you don't have to go at this like a world on our shoulders kind of thing. We just get to do what we're called to do. And invariably, what I'm finding is, what people are called to do is something that they are deeply, deeply passionate about, have the skills for, or at least can develop them, but have a certain X factor that allows them to pursue that passion and that purpose with a joyfulness. Now, doesn't mean there's not sometimes sacrifices, and that's a word sometimes that that people have different take on, but the payout of following your calling is infinitely rewarding. It's infinitely rewarding. There may be some things you got to lay down along the way, but it's infinitely rewarding. And so I just love your call out for people to follow their hearts and follow their calling.
Well, absolutely, because and even if sacrifice, I understand the linguistics of the word, but what if you had actually ditched something that you maybe habitually do that maybe doesn't serve you to your greatest higher purpose, and replace it with something, or find that path that makes a difference? Because in all the work I've done over the years, we all need to feel safe and secure. We all like to have some variety because it's the spice of life. We all like to feel that we're important and that we matter and we make a difference. We all want love and connection. And what I think so many of us, and we get so busy being busy in this rat race of the Western world and work. It's to take the time to continue to grow, because if you're not growing, you're dying.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing that lights me up when I work with people and they're stuck somewhere, the first thing I'll say is, go contribute somewhere. Go volunteer. Go do something that you're passionate about, that's beyond you, that helps others, because that's where the juice is. That's where the joy is. I always feel best when I'm giving, when I'm serving, when I'm growing and learning. And if I can impart inspiration and some of the things I've learned, if I could say, if somebody just says, wow, you give me something to think about, I feel like, that's my work here is done and I'm still here. So there's lots more work to do. And Ben, I got to just say how honored and humbled I am to be part of this event this week. And, just what it's done for me, even though, we all have that our own path. This week has really been inspirational and impactful for me as well, on so many different levels. The growth, the contribution, the learning, the connections. It's like on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm at 100 right now. We're all getting by. You're in Australia. We're all getting by on crazy little bits of sleep, but we're passionate. We're excited. We're having fun. And we know we're making a difference for people. So I want to really thank you for the work you're doing. And I'm happy to be part of the team to support this global initiative to really create change in the world. And I think that's, it's the juice of life. And if you don't believe it, my suggestion is try it, test it, go grow, go do something beyond you for someone else with no expectation of something in return, just because you care.
Beautiful. That's beautiful, Mark. Yeah, right back at you. I know we got to close now, but just so grateful to be doing this together. There is a lot of enjoyment and a lot of fun and laughter along the way. My final message words, Mark, would be there is room for everybody. And we need everybody. There's a room for everybody. And finding
There's a
out
Zoom room for everybody. You can join us in Zoom. Come, you got 4 days. Come and join us. Be part of the in-house virtual audience. We'd love to see you there.
Yes. Amen. Amen. Thank you, brother. It's been great to sit down with you and have this conversation. Loved it. Look forward to more to come.
Thank you so much, Ben. I really appreciate the time that we've had. My name is Mark Caron. You have been listening to Conscious Living Radio here on CFRO 100.5 FM in Vancouver. Until next time, take care of each other, everyone.